We got Sister Representative Barbara Lee with us. Thank you so much for joining. We had a little technical difficulty, so we're sorry to be late. How are you doing?
That's okay. I've been listening to both of you, and you're right on point. I associate
tell
myself with your remarks.
Tell us, we don't want to waste any time. Tell us what you thought. What are your take? How did you experience this situation?
Well, first, let me just say about Pence. I served with him when he was in the House of Representatives. This is who he is, okay? And he's slick. Okay, he's slick. He's manipulative.
Yes.
And he always comes across, and I've been on not necessarily debates, but interviews with him side by side. And he will manipulate and twist the facts. But because he's so slick and smooth, people believe him oftentimes. And that's the danger. You know, that's the danger. Secondly, let me tell you, I think it was the last question or close to the last question about the peaceful transfer of power. This man did not even answer that question. And going to what you said, Dr. West, about who this administration is, I think that was a very glaring example of their undemocratic, their not caring about the voting rights of everyone, knowing that they're in the midst of suppressing the vote. And he totally deflected that and did not answer, would you support a peaceful transfer of power? He went right to, we're going to win the election. Now, that to me would be a simple question to answer in this country, you would think, regardless of party. But he never even answered that. So I think that's a glimpse into their thinking and what we need to be concerned about. So we've got to vote, and we got to make sure everyone casts their vote. I think tonight, Senator Harris was very strong. I mean, she laid out not only why this administration is responsible due to the lack of leadership for the 211,000 deaths from COVID-19, with this man, Vice President Pence, leading the task force. And she really started out in her remarks painting that picture so people would know early on that this did not have to happen. I mean, we have, 30 million plus people who've lost their jobs, 211,000 people dead, millions with the virus, and it all can be tracked and traced right back to the lack of leadership, the withholding of information, the lack of transparency, and to this day, not supporting the resources for testing and contact tracing and healthcare. And I think also she was very clear with regard to the Supreme Court nomination and why, in fact, 20-some days out, while people are voting, that it's dangerous, it's undemocratic to have this president nominate a Supreme Court justice and go through this process, because the people's voice will be totally ignored. And we should wait until after the election. And she made the case linking and showing how the Affordable Care Act, which is up now before the Supreme Court, and how millions of people will lose their health care. And that's part of the rush to judgment I know that this Trump administration has in terms of this Supreme Court nomination. And that is, while Donald Trump is benefiting from taxpayer socialized, in many respects, medicine,
VIP medicine,
at the same time trying to take away health care from the millions of people who have it. Outrageous. And I think that was very clear tonight in terms of their intention.
I think you're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
I mean, not only is it the irony that when Obama and Trump were crossing over, the question was Obama shouldn't appoint anybody to the Supreme Court 200 some odd days before the election. Here we are, and so the hypocrisy is so thick, it's almost, you can't even see it, right? It's just so thick. It's so
thick. And then the point that Senator Harris made about the judges that have been appointed and not one African American.
And mediocre, unqualified.
unqualified. That's who they are, though. And so, listening to this tonight, and with that moderator who was not a moderator, I mean, you're right about her lack of discipline with regard to Pence. I mean, it was outrageous.
Exactly.
Women should be furious at her.
I'm furious.
And of course,
definitely.
Vice President Pence for trying to lecture Kamala Harris, to try to tell her he wants her to answer his questions. It's like, come on.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
The lack of respect was so clear. Oh my God, this white supremacy is thick.
It's just so out of control. It's impunity on steroids to say and do anything and get away with it, and then walk around with a smile and act as if everything's normal.
Right.
Yeah. That's the arrogance.
The arrogance is capital A. It's just such a sad spectacle. But thank God we got to keep fighting, and we got to
keep fighting. But I think all that came out tonight in the debate.
That's true.
And I think that for those who were undecided, which are very few right now, I'm confident that they saw this picture that was painted. Excuse me. And will go to the polls and vote for Biden and Harris, regardless of differences that you may have.
But we wonder, Sister Lee. Well, I'll just say sister because we brother and sister. We wonder, though. We got a whole wave of fellow citizens who are living in a bubble who actually saw him doing something that they like.
Right.
And they will vote, but I think, though, we have more on our side if we vote.
That's what I hope. That's what I'm hoping.
The people who support him, the people who support him, they're going to support. I mean, that percentage of their supporters are there. With Donald Trump, with COVID-19, I mean, they're painting a pretty picture of him having contracted COVID-19 in terms of his machoism.
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
Yeah, don't be afraid. So they're creating all that. But we have to remember their families who are still in grieving. People are dying each and every day. Black and brown people are dying disproportionately from COVID-19. And they won't even acknowledge systemic racism. I mean, just look at the healthcare system. Why are African Americans and Latinx and indigenous people and AAPI individuals dying disproportionately? It's because of the inequities and the racism, and they won't even acknowledge systemic racism exists. And so I think that those.
They won't even acknowledge it in the police force, let alone in the healthcare system.
No. I think those who weren't quite sure, I think tonight should convince them of how they need to vote.
Well, I sure hope so.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but sometimes I wonder, though, Sister Lee.
I know.
When Martin King said it's a sick country, we understood what he was talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that we trashing anybody. We know everybody's human. You can choose to be arrogant. You choose to be haughty. You choose to be hateful. You choose to be greedy. These are choices that people are making.
Yeah. And we have a country where systemic racism is in the DNA of this country. And so we have to remember, we've got to fight to not necessarily reform these structures, but to dismantle systemic racism stemming back to, at least African Americans 401 years ago, in terms of the enslaved Africans being brought to this country. Jim Crow, lynching, mass incarceration, discrimination, segregation. We have to remember and put this system and this government in context of who we vote for. Because are we going to continue to perpetuate the system, or are we going to elect people who at least acknowledge that something is wrong? In terms of justice and equity.
And one of the issues I do want to note before you have to run, because you've been so courageous, exemplary, and visionary when it comes to the militarism that Brother Martin Luther King Jr. and Fannie Lou Hamer tried to pass on to us to keep a focus on. One of the few folk in Congress standing up with the military-industrial complex, military budget. That issue didn't even surface. The wars, the militarism, the Pentagon expansion, and so forth. So what do you make of that, my dear Sister Lee?
Yeah, the authorization to use military force, for example. The one I voted against after 9/11, it being the only member of Congress, that was 60 words of blank check that gave any president, Democrat or Republican, the authority to go to war forever. Now, fast forward to now, I've been able to repeal it, but we can't get it through the Senate. The 2001, Afghanistan, 2002. That's a big issue because going to war means that we have to adhere to the Constitution, which means the people's voice in matters of war and peace based on the constitutional requirement for Congress to authorize war, that we've undercut and been missing in action in terms of your voice in making and upholding the Constitution. And so that didn't even come up. The majority of Americans want these wars ended, and they want Congress to be the body to do our job. And it's a big issue, never came up. And I hope at some point Pence will talk about it. I mean, I know, and I was on the drafting committee for the platform for our Democratic Party, and we came up with a fairly progressive, I think, with Bernie and Biden's task force members, really, I think the most progressive platform we've ever seen. But in that platform, we talk about the perpetual wars and how we have to end those perpetual wars, and how the president must come to Congress if, in fact, he wants to use force. And so there's a big difference there, but it did not come out in the debate. So I just hope somehow we'll know what the Trump-Pence, make it public at least, what their position is. We know what the Biden-Harris position is, and no one ever reads the platform, of course, but I would suggest for those who are interested to kind of read it. It's a decent platform. It's really good.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, we know you have to run, so we don't want to hold you up, but it's been so great to have you. You nailed every critical point. And thank you, Cornel, for asking about the wars, because, that's really the blank check that we really need to put a balance on, because
trillions of dollars, trillions of dollars this year. We tried to cut the military budget by 10%. I think, Cornel, you followed this. Mark Pocan and I had the amendment. 10% is only $74 billion. It wouldn't even touch anything within the military. That's waste, fraud, and abuse.
You were strong.
We got about 90, 97, 98 votes for it. So we're going to continue to move forward to try to get some rational defense spending. Over $740 billion now is totally off the scale. And to try to really come up with some significant cuts that won't touch our national security needs, won't touch what our troops need in terms of their welfare and their health and their safety, but will directly lay out how waste, fraud, and abuse is so prevalent of the Pentagon. We need those resources for schools, for housing the unsheltered, for roads, transportation, and for creating good paying jobs in this country.
Yes, indeed.
So,
I tell you, we love you. We respect you.
Yes,
East
Congresswoman Lee, thank you so much.
Well, I'm so happy to be with you. You all are really raising come the back issues. Truth-telling time is what you all are doing with the tightrope. It's truth-telling time with y'all. So it's been good.
Excellent.
Indeed. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Lee. We really appreciate you. You're welcome on the tightrope anytime you got time, but we know you're out there fighting. So hang on, stay strong. All right, good. We'll make it happen.
Both. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Indeed.
Bye-bye.
Great to see you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Whew, well, we have.
She's the breath of fresh air, though.
Isn't she? Fresh air and courage and a lot of energy, which is hard to have in the face of all of this.